I'm Sokeel Park. I'm the Director of Research and Strategy here at Liberty in North Korea. This morning, we heard about how bad North Korea is. And frankly, we could talk for 2 whole days just documenting all of the details about human rights violations and how bad the humanitarian situation is inside the country as well. But we have a limited time. And we also want to focus on a different aspect of North Korea. This is an aspect of North Korea that's actually amazing. It's the North Korean people. And this is why I go to the office every day. This is why it's so exciting to work on this issue. It's because even though the North Korean people face these incredible challenges, it's the North Korean people that are creating change and driving progress on this issue. Even though the North Korean government tries so hard to close their country up and to restrict and tie down North Korean society, it's the North Korean people that are breaking free of those restrictions little by little and forcing a gradual opening up of their country. So that's why we're focusing on the North Korean people in this session. In particular, we're going to focus on the North Korean millennials. We also refer to this generation as the market or 장마당 generation in North Korea. And as I talk through, you're going to understand why we also refer to them as those kind of labels. 장마당 is the North Korean word for market, by the way. But first of all, I just want to give you some top-level context to understand why we think that this is, this social change, this rise of this change generation in North Korea is going to be so crucial in the future transformation of North Korea that we're all going to be a part of as well. The first thing to understand is that the North Korean millennial generation grew up through a profound economic crisis, and they emerged from that on the other side by taking increasing control over the economy. Before the 1990s, the North Korean government controlled an extremely tightly run command economy, right? Basically, everybody worked for the government and everybody got government rations. However, after that, North Korea found themselves on the losing side of the Cold War, and without the aid and subsidized trade from the communist countries, the inherent weaknesses and inefficiencies of that state socialist economy caught up with themselves, and the state economy collapsed. All of a sudden, in the mid-1990s, the North Korean people no longer received rations from the government. This resulted in a tragic famine, where up to 1 million people lost their lives. Countless families lost their children, mothers, fathers. But the North Korean people that emerged on the other side of that were able to survive because they took their livelihoods into their own hands. Basically, they went out and foraged. They bought and sold things that they could find or make. They created markets and private businesses. And so they began to basically provide themselves and others with the things that the government could no longer provide. And this is the economic reality that our North Korean millennial friends grew up in. They basically never or hardly ever got anything from the government. The government was not a provider, it was an obstacle, and it was a reason for poverty. The second big thing to understand is that the North Korean millennial generation grew up in a new and changing information environment inside North Korea. Again, the background context to that is that North Korean government, probably more than any other government in history, has gone to extreme lengths to try and control the people through this shamelessly Orwellian strategy of controlling the information and ideas that are available to the North Korean people. However, again, over the last 15 years, we've seen that information blockade crumble and the North Korean government's monopoly over information begun to be eat away because of two main trends. The first one is people flows. After the famine and the new market economy reality in North Korea, you had an unprecedented number of North Koreans leaving the country, mostly to China, and then coming back. So this includes people like smugglers, people engaged in different kinds of trade, even North Korean refugees who were caught in China and sent back. This is tens or even hundreds of thousands of people that had direct exposure to the outside world and then went back home. And when they went back to their home communities, they shared that information. That was a really significant information flow. The second really important thing that's eating away at the information blockade is new technologies and access to foreign media. These new technologies started to emerge in the outside world, and it happened kind of coincidentally at the same time as this market economy in North Korea was networking across the country and also becoming linked to the Chinese markets. And so information technologies came into the country, and foreign media came in as well that they could consume. So this includes things like DVD players, USB drives, and Chinese mobile phones, even laptops. So the North Korean millennial generation came of age right at this time, right when there was an unprecedented access to foreign media inside the country. And North Korean millennial generation, they're like young people everywhere. As Peter said yesterday, there's nothing more dangerous than a 19-year-old. And so this young generation, their curiosity was high and their fear of risk was low. And so, naturally, they became the vanguard of information technology use and foreign media consumption inside the country. Basically, these guys are running the trends on watching South Korean dramas, Chinese films, American films. Even Bollywood is surprisingly popular in North Korea. Juyang told me that. In contrast with their parents, the North Korean millennials grew up being able to access this foreign media and consider alternative realities and even fantasize about the kind of lives that they saw in these foreign films. They were able to consider the ideology that was being presented by the government and see how that contrasted between what they saw in the outside world and their own lives and what they were taught to expect about life in the outside world. And interestingly, amongst North Korean millennials in particular, this is not just an individual behavior, this is shared with friends. So increasingly, we hear from recent North Korean defectors that people are gathering in their houses and they're watching South Korean films or Chinese dramas, this kind of stuff, with their friends. That's really significant. The final main point is that there's a new level of networking amongst North Korean people that is possible and that the North Korean millennial generation have grown up with. So again, the North Korean government has gone to extreme lengths to try and prevent any kind of challenge to their authority or power by controlling any kinds of groups or associations or even relationships between North Korean people. But given these new economic realities and new information realities, that's changing. So for instance, if you're engaged in private business, you're working with other people. You're buying, you're selling, you're cooperating, you're building trust. And this is often in ways which runs counter to government restrictions and outside of government-controlled space. Secondly, if you're consuming foreign media, the only way to do that, unless you have access to, unless you're actually smuggling the stuff into the country, if you're removed from that, you have to get it from other people. You have to get it from friends and family members that you trust. And then if you're watching that, discussing it, gathering together in homes in the evenings to watch it with other people, you're engaged in shared disobedience. You're doing things against government control together with other people. You're networking. So increasingly, non-compliance, disobedience, and even frustration against government controls are shared, they're networked, and they're becoming normalized, especially, again, amongst the North Korean millennial generation.